So good evening and welcome. My name is Alexander O'Hara. I'm the National Director for Catechetics and Executive Secretary to the Council for Catechetics of the Irish Episcopal Conference. It's my pleasure to welcome Professor Roland Lacroix from Paris, who will explore the success of the catechumenate for adults in the Catholic Church in France and how the Catholic Church in Ireland can learn from the experience in France. The timing of this webinar is opportune as we are currently developing national guidelines for RCIA in Ireland, and as the Directory for Catechesis 2020 makes clear, the catechumenate is the inspiration for all catechesis in the Church. Roland Lacroix is a professor of Practical Theology and Catechetics at the Higher Institute of Catechetical Pastoral Studies at the Faculty of Theology of the Catholic Institute of Paris. He was for a long time responsible for the catechumenate and then head of the training service in his diocese. His thesis focuses on the French catechumenate, the Adult Catechumenate in France, 1945 to 2005, a historical, pastoral, and theological analysis. His research mainly concerns catechumenal practices, conversion, and the relationship between catechesis and liturgy. He is an associate editor for France of the journal Lumen Vitae, an international French language journal of pastoral studies and catechesis. He is a member of the International Society for Practical Theology, the European Team for Catechesis, and the European Team for Catechumenate, Eurocat. His latest published work is Accompanying Catechumens, published in Paris 2022. And just to say that we will be recording this webinar and that there will be time for Q&A after the talk. So Professor Lacroix, you're very welcome.
Thank you for inviting me to this webinar. I also thank Alex for translating my text and apologize in advance for my bad English accent. The current development concerning the request for adult baptisms is not new in France. If it was the Second Vatican Council that asked to restore the catechumenate, in France, this restoration was much earlier and progressive. Indeed, as early as the 1940s, a catechumenal concern was born, linked to a double context. A crisis already in the transmission of the faith and the reappearance of requests for adult baptisms. The birth of a contemporary catechumenate in France is thus at the crossroads of a missionary emergency and a then unprecedented demand. The history of this catechumenate is rich in lessons, as is its current practice. My talk will be based on this history and this practice. In the presentation of this webinar, we discuss the success of the adult catechumenate in France and what you could learn from its experience. I will try to honor this theme by developing my remarks in three parts. In the first part, I will allow myself to clarify the success of the French catechumenate. I think it necessary in the second part to consider some significant elements of its evolution that will allow me to identify important markers for current catechumenal practice. Finally, in the third part, I will highlight some theological and practical issues concerning the Christian initiation of adults that seem essential to me today. Part 1. Can we speak of the success of the adult catechumenate in France? The French catechumenate can be considered the pioneer of the contemporary practice of the catechumenate. After 80 years of existence of this catechumenate, success seems to be there. However, I will clarify this success by pointing out some elements that seem useful to me for current practice. I will do so in 3 points. First point, a detour through the figures. Let's start with the figures. It has been a constant in France since 1990 to provide statistics each year at Easter. Statistics commented by the press, not only the Catholic press. In fact, the figures of the French Adult Catechumenate are constantly increasing. 7,135 adults were baptized this year, with an increase of 31% compared to last year. The number of adolescent baptisms is also increasing significantly, more than 5,000, but probably much more given the difficulty of collecting precise figures from the dioceses. The increase in the number of adult baptisms has accelerated in recent years. Between 2020 and 2024, there will be a 112% increase. To put these figures into broader perspective, in 1904, 20 years ago, there were 2,540 adult baptisms, 3 times fewer than today. Let us note some constants. Young adults are in the majority. This has been the case since statistics have been published. 80% are under 40, of whom 36 are between 18 and 35. 2/3 are women, 62% in 1994. The number of accompanying persons is around 10,000. Second point, how can we understand this development? Since the revival of the catechumenate in France, this increase in requests for adult baptism has of course raised questions, and even more so in a country where secularism has been established for over a century. All the more so at a time when the revelation of numerous sexual abuses committed by clerics since the 1950s has upset many Catholics. The increase in requests for adult baptisms is undoubtedly linked to the current movement of secularization and individualization of values, but also to the return of the spiritual among young adults, their quest for meaning, perhaps also a request for identity linked to their encounter with young Muslims who more easily affirm their faith. If we still lack perspective on the recent increases, we can nevertheless mention the ambient climate of anxiety about the future. The COVID crisis, war in Ukraine, global warming, etc. We should also put Christian conversions into perspective with conversions to other religions. However, a real investigation remains to be done on these conversions to Catholicism, which remain a real surprise for sociologists of religions. These Christian conversions can also be read theologically. God still calls today, and the Church is tested in its capacity to welcome, accompany, and incorporate new converts who respond to this call. We can also mention a pastoral reason demonstrated by the French experience of the catechumenate. The fact that a very visible and organized catechumenate and liturgical stages experienced in the parish can be a force of appeal for potential candidates for baptism. If the adult catechumenate were made a pastoral priority by giving it more resources, the requests would, in my opinion, be much more numerous. The catechumenate of adolescents and adults is therefore a real improvement in the French Catholic landscape, where many warning lights are read. For example, we can note a considerable decrease in baptisms of children under 7 years old. 3/4 of children under 7 years old were baptized in 1974, half in 1996, 1/4 in 2024. The baptism of adults is far from compensating for this loss. Third point, a success of the adult catechumenate to be qualified. One of the recurring questions of the Church of France with regard to the adult catechumenate is important to recall here. The incorporation of neophytes into parishes. This question has been constantly raised since the beginnings of the French catechumenate. As proof, in 1956, the very first survey of the catechumenate, not very rigorous, it already declared 4,000 to 5,000 adult baptisms per year. This first survey mentioned 80% of these baptized people not persevering after the baptism. This percentage of 80% is strongly repeated today, while no serious survey can confirm or deny it. Let us add that in 1962, the first national meeting of the French catechumenate took place with the theme, the current situation of neophytes. So, to this day, the question remains regularly asked in many meetings and sessions, what happens to the neophytes? This year again, the National Service for Catechesis and Catechumenate published a document after a session on post-Christian initiation, accompanying the neophytes. It should be noted that today we find more and more baptized adults active in parishes or diocesan pastoral services. In any case, this problem of the future of the neophytes shows that the increase in the number of adult baptisms is not the most representative indicator of the good health of the French catechumenate. Another nuance to bring to the success of the French catechumenate, it concerns the implementation of the ritual of Christian initiation of adults. This is still not obvious today. This ritual remains poorly known and little understood, which is still too often demonstrated by the way in which the liturgical stages are celebrated or not celebrated. It is above all the celebration of the three sacraments of initiation during the Easter Vigil that remains problematic. Indeed, there is still no unity in France on this issue. In a number of dioceses, including mine, the sacraments of initiation are not celebrated in their unity and order during the Easter Vigil, but confirmation is postponed until Pentecost. Was still in a number of dioceses or parishes, the trend is to postpone the Eucharist of baptized adults from Easter to a later date. This goes against the theology of Christian initiation and the very meaning of its sacraments in their relationships to the Paschal mystery. As for the criterion of preparation, how can we say that a catechumen is ready to receive baptism and not the Eucharist? This is to deny the importance of the instituting dynamic of the sacraments of initiation. Through them, it is the Passover itself of Christ which works on the new converts. The Eucharist, the culmination of Christian initiation and openness to Christian life, thus places the initiation received in eschatological perspective. All this shows that having many years of experience is not enough. In fact, the important thing would be that the experience be accompanied by a theological and practical reflection that ensures the monitoring of catechumenal practice. A national service played this role in the past in France, less so today. Catechumenal practice is therefore often subject to the opinion of this or that bishop, of this or that priest. Another nuance, it concerns the relationship between the catechesis of children and the catechumenate of adults and adolescents. While the Catechesis of children is suffering a huge loss of momentum in France, the pastoral resources given to it were much superior to those of the catechumenate. The French bishops remain focused on the catechesis of children. If we recognize the importance of the catechumenate, we must give it real pastoral resources. Last nuance, the training of companions, although important, is not at its best today. The bishops and priests themselves know little about catechumenal practice and its ritual, participating little in organized training. I see this in my diocese and in the dioceses I travel to. However, the accompaniment of catechumens is delicate. The liturgies to be implemented require a real knowledge of the ritual. Finally, we could ask ourselves, has the presence of catechumens and neophytes for almost 80 years really brought something new to the life of the Church of France? Since the new renewal of the French catechumenate, catechumens have been considered an opportunity for the Church. Has this been verified? Evaluating the presence of catechumens and neophytes would allow for real discernment. Does the Church in France allow itself to be challenged by this presence to adjust its mission to the current context? It was useful, it seems to me, to clarify the so-called success of the French catechumenate, to emphasize that the Church in France, even after 80 years of catechumenal experience, has not yet truly become an initiating church, because that is what it is all about, initiating non-baptized adults into the Christian life. Secondly, the French catechumenate, significant elements of its evolution, useful for drawing inspiration from it. In this second part, I will highlight what, in the evolution of the French catechumenate, can be considered as essential markers of catechumenal practice as an initiatory practice. This part will include 2 points. First point, the evolution of the institutionalization of the adult catechumenate. An important characteristic of the adult catechumenate reborn in France is that it was first practiced outside of parishes. Indeed, catechumens were catechized for a long time in catechumenate centers or catechumenal communities. Catechumenate practitioners thought that parishes were incapable of welcoming the novelty brought by catechumens, given the tendency to live the faith in a routine way, in the we've always done it like that way. This, of course, greatly hindered the integration of catechumenal practice into parish pastoral work. This integration has been done little by little, but I suspect that this delay still contributes to a certain difficulty in incorporating neophytes into parish communities. This challenges current catechumenal practice. We must be wary of the temptation to consider the catechumenate as a practice apart from ordinary pastoral practice. If the catechumenate has indeed finally become parochial, we are now returning to accompanying catechumens in separate places. For example, some bishops ask to create catechumenal fraternities, bringing together people in the process of initiation, candidates, catechumens, repeaters, neophytes, and other people. It then underlines the inadequacy of the parishes. I quote, "Catechumenal fraternities are the first place where adults in initiation learn to identify God's action in their lives and to talk about it." With this observation, it's one bishop. with this observation that resembles what was foot in the early days of the contemporary catechumenate, and that I have just mentioned concerning the inability of parishes to welcome catechumens and neophytes. I quote still, the parish community plays an important role so that catechumens or those starting out feel surrounded and like family in their parish. But that is not enough, writes an archbishop. A way, therefore, of pointing out once again the inability of parishes, rather than encouraging them and giving them the means to make the catechumenate their pastoral priority. On the other hand, the French catechumenate became institutionalized very quickly. The first diocesan service was created in Lyon in 1953, and the national service was created in 1964 in the middle of the council. This institutionalization favored the development of the catechumenate, but here again, it hindered the awareness of parish communities of their catechumenal responsibility because they were not taken into account enough in this institutionalization. There is therefore a balance to be found. Since 2005, the Catechesis and catechumenate services have been merged at the national level. Often also at the level of the dioceses, the tendency began in France in the dioceses to create centers bringing together various services. For example, the catechumenate included in a center of the proclamation of the faith. This requires caution because it does not promote close support between the diocesan catechumenate and the parish catechumenate, in particular to support the companions and for a unified diocesan practice of the catechumenate. Thus, the experience of the French catechumenate shows the importance of catechumenal practice being both fully included in parish community practice because proximity is essential for the future of the Christian development of neophytes and the need for an essential diocesan structure to ensure the link between catechumens and the bishop, the training of companions, and assistance with discernment, with a specific national structure to support essential theological reflection. Second point, evolution of the relationship between the catechumenate and the liturgy. Since the Renaissance of the French catechumenate, the research of liturgy and sacramental theologians, then in the midst of rediscovering the initiation practices of the first centuries, but also catechetical reflection, which was then experiencing a renewal that tended to favor the link between catechesis and liturgy, have allowed the experimentation of the liturgical stages of baptism, which began in 1950s. Until 1962, I remind you, priests were not authorized to celebrate in stages the existing ritual, the Ordo of Adult Baptism of the Rituale Romanum of Paul V. The catechumenate thus began discreetly in France in an experimental and pragmatic manner. In Paris, for example, at the very beginning, the student priests of my institute, then called the Higher Catechetical Institute, provided liturgical support for the catechesis that the nuns gave to the catechumens in their communities. This liturgical experimentation continued in the catechumenal communities and contributed greatly to the writing of the Ordo Initiationis Christianae Adultorum, promulgated in 1972. More recently, it was by experimenting with the liturgy of the ritual of initiation of a ritual of Christian initiation of adults, that significant adaptations were born that continue today. Knocking on the church door during the first stage, a letter from catechumens to the bishop at the time of the election, the presentation of a purple scarf at the time of the election, etc. The catechumenate is first and foremost a liturgical practice. It also wants to be creative in its implementation, but this requires a good knowledge of it and therefore solid training. I cannot dwell at length on the reflection made in the 1950s in sacramental theology, the catechumenal itinerary being already considered an entirely sacramental itinerary. I quote Jean Danielou in 1956. It may be that a certain theology of the sacraments has led us to situate the entire sacrament at the moment where the essential act is accomplished, and thus to ignore the importance of these preparatory acts of worship, which are already sacramentals. They have a value, otherwise we do not see why the Church will do them. Before baptism, something happens already in the order of grace, or else all these gestures are devoid of meaning. There is a quasi-sacramental action that begins to be accomplished and of which the acts precisely are the expression. Surprisingly and paradoxically, the French catechumenate has not evolved in this direction. For a long time, like Catechesis, it has experienced a certain reluctance towards the liturgy, which resulted in a first French language ad interim adaptation of the Ordo Initiationis Christianae Adultorum, somewhat removed from this ritual, published in 1974, entitled Rituel du baptême des adultes, like the ancient ritual. Practitioners of the French catechumenate considered the vocabulary of the Ordo Initiationis Christianae Adultorum to be archaeological and not adapted to modern catechumens. For example, the word mystagogy did not appear in the ad interim ritual. This ritual was to be used until 1997, the date of publication du Rituel de l'initiation chrétienne des adultes. This endeavored a global, coherent vision of the Christian initiation of catechumens. This raises questions about how to understand the catechumenate, either as a preparation for baptism, with stages validating the progress of the catechumens, or as the implementation of Christian initiation, in which it is a liturgy that forms the Christian becoming of the catechumens, as suggested by the name of the third stage in the Roman ritual, rite for making catechumens. It is indeed a question of initiating adults to the Christian life through a ritual itinerary, including the sacraments of initiation, baptism, confirmation, and Eucharist, but not stopping at these sacraments because it continues until Pentecost through the time of mystagogy. In fact, it should be noted that from the beginning, the French catechumenate understood its mission in a broad sense. Its ambition was to renew pastoral practice as a whole. In the 1970s and 1980s, there was talk of catechumenal pastoral care, a pastoral care for all people in search of the spiritual of faith. Yet another obstacle to understanding the catechumenate as an implementation of Christian initiation. It was in 2000s when French Catechesis itself took the option of considering Christian initiation as a reference, what was called in France the pedagogy of initiation, an expression also taken in the directory for Catechesis of 2020, that the Catechumenate rediscovered its mission to initiate catechumens into the Christian life. The implementation of the new adaptation of the rituel de l'initiation chrétienne des adultes, closer to the order of Initiationis Christianae Adultorum, played a role in this rediscovery. Even today, catechumenal practice in France, in the implementation of the rituel de l'initiation chrétienne des adultes, is affected by a lack of reflection in sacramental and liturgical theology. As a result, this ritual is too rarely considered in its entirety, in its coherence. For example, the time of mystagogy is not understood as a time of initiation to the Eucharist and to fraternal life in community. There is always the temptation, in order to ensure the future neophytes, to invent new structures to accompany them, to create a neophytate, rather than working on their parish incorporation. Training in the rituel of de l'initiation chrétienne des adultes is undoubtedly the first catechumenal emergency. There would, of course, be other points of development to discuss, but I must stick to the format planned for this webinar and my third part, some essential theological and practical issues for the implementation of the Christian initiation of adults. Some essential issues were already present in my first two parts. Those that I will develop in this third part will echo what I have just mentioned. I will return 5 issues. First issues. It is Christ who initiates us. John Chrysostom said in a Catechesis to catechumens about baptism, Christ is there who initiates you for the new birth by water and the Spirit. And the constitution of the liturgy, Sacrosanctum Concilium, says in its number 7, Christ is present by his power in the sacraments to the point that when someone baptizes, it is Christ himself who baptizes. This is one of the specificities of Christian initiation compared to other initiations. The companions do not have full mastery of it. They are not masters of initiation. This theological data implies an essential characteristic of catechumenal practice. If it consists of leading a ritual itinerary, the ritual, the actors of catechumenate must learn to live the lack of mastery in their mission. The challenge is to initiate the catechumens by letting the Word and the Holy Spirit do their own work. There is a challenge here that borders on paradox. We have to do everything possible to initiate the catechumens and at the same time accept the lack of control over their own journey. This is what the liturgy of initiation invites us to do. The encounter with Christ always remains a mystery. In my opinion, this contributes to the exercise of discernment, one of the equally essential challenges of the catechumenate. Unfortunately, catechumenal discernment sometimes tends to make the Church a customs post, despite the warnings of Pope Francis. If it is Christ who initiates us, should we not give priority to the privilege of faith before any other criterion for the reception of the sacraments of initiation? Second challenge, Christian initiation, a liturgical process above all. The main characteristic of the accompaniment of converts is therefore in the Catholic Church, since the day after the Second Vatican Council, that they are offered to follow ritual itinerary. This proposal respects the theological coherence according to which the grace of God awaits a free response from the person. It says clearly that conversion is not limited to a sudden reversal, but that it is itself part of a process. If the experience of initiation understood as a progressive unveiling of the Paschal mystery, unfolds in the catechetical, ecclesial, existential dimensions, etc., everything is concentrated in the liturgical experience. When catechumens respond to God's gift with faith, it is with their whole being, including their body. As the liturgical theologian Louis-Marie Chauvet says, the body is God's path. Catechumens thus experience the necessary mediations in the relationship with God. The liturgical experience brings them into this dimension of Christian existence where the most spiritual is experienced in the most corporeal. We could speak of the bodily learning of believing. That is to say, of the non-immediacy of faith, of the importance of mediations and of entering into a Christian tradition, which seems essential to foster their conversion. We can thus speak of the ritual as a process of accompanying the conventional catechumens. Each liturgical gesture participates in the maturation of their faith. The liturgy of the ritual is not reduced to the liturgical stages. During the time of catechumenate and its rites, for example, the ritual offers celebration of the Word of God, minor exorcisms, and blessings of the catechumens, as well as the anointing with charism. The anointing with chrism. However, the French experience of the catechumenate shows the difficulty, even today, of celebrating the liturgies of initiation. A significant example is a recurring difficulty in implementing the rite of scrutiny, which is nevertheless essential because it presents Christian life as a spiritual combat at the very moment when converted catechumens are approaching the sacraments of initiation. The challenge of implementing the ritual process of Christian initiation is coupled with the challenge of the work to be done to read the rites, analyze them, and interpret them. This is an exercise that I have done in class and in training. Many companions, including priests and bishops, have already done this work of entering into the meaning of the gestures, prayers, symbols that a ritual deploys, and what they mean in terms of initiation. Let us note that the recent Directory for Catechesis Acts in number 152, that the ritual be explored in greater depths in seminaries and in houses of formation. Third challenge, a catechesis linked to the liturgy of initiation. The catechesis of the catechumens must always be linked to the liturgy. A catechesis is structured by the ritual program of the ritual, and of which the Bible remains the essential source. It is appropriate to mention the importance of the celebrations of the Word of God, which I have already mentioned. They are, according to the ritual, adapted to the liturgical time, proposed during the time of the catechumenate, and their goal is to engrave in the hearts of the catechumens the teaching received about the mysteries of Christ and the way of life that flows from them. But also, I quote the ritual, to test the forms and ways of prayer, to discover the meaning of the signs, actions, and times of the liturgical mystery, to be introduced little by little into the liturgy of the whole community, and to get into the habit of participating in it in an active, unconscious way. Accompanying catechumens thus means initiating by linking catechesis and liturgy, but also initiating to the liturgy through the liturgy. There is a challenge here that is still too little addressed in the French catechumenate. First, centered on the Paschal mystery, Christian initiation takes into account the catechumens in the totality of their being, heart, body, spirit, intelligence, memory, life experience. Hence, the importance of what I call mystagogical action that could be defined as a weaving between catechesis, liturgy, and experience of life that the initiation into the Christian life of adults implies. Fourth challenge, helping catechumens move from conversion to vocation. In truth, it is each sequence of the itinerary that participates in supporting conversion. Liturgical itinerary, set of rites of Christian initiation. Catechetical itinerary, biblical and narrative catechesis. Ecclesial itinerary, meetings with the community, etc. This entire itinerary verse structures the nascent faith of the catechumens based on their life experience, to which the companions are very attentive. However, it is indeed a question of making disciples. This is what Christ asked. Christian initiation, therefore, does not stop at making baptized, confirmed, and Eucharistic people, but consists of supporting these new Christians in their passage to a pastoral conversion, that is, to participation in the witness of the community. This is the whole challenge of the time of mystagogy. This is not limited to presenting them with a parish organization chart so that they can choose an activity, but consisting of taking into account their personal charisms likely to bring something new and original to the ecclesial mission. Conversion is also a vocation. We can refer here to the conversion vocation stories of St. Paul. It is indeed God who calls the catechumens, as signified by the stage of election or enrollment of names. First and last issue, an essential question, sponsorship. It seems to me that sponsorship is one of the keystones of the coherence of the initiation itinerary proposed by the ritual in the service of the incorporation of catechumens into the Church. The French Catechumenate, in its early years, had initiated 3 practical reflection projects: Catechesis, liturgy, and sponsorship. This third project, sponsorship, was unfortunately quickly abandoned. It is being taken up again today. The ritual refers to the Godfather as delegated by the local Christian community. And the Godfather and Godmother, always according to the ritual, have an active liturgical participation during the election and during the scrutinies, with this beautiful gesture of the hand placed on the shoulder of the gold shield, also during the baptism. Gold shield, also during the baptism. These gestures speak of the importance of this mission. Thus, the Christian community, to serve the coherence of the ritual and to go to the end of its initiatory role, gets from concretely delegating one of its members so that he or she becomes godfather or godmother of the community of one or more newly baptized. This is an essential issue for the incorporation of neophytes into Christian communities, but which requires, once again, to prioritize the catechumenate in relation to other pastoral actions. My conclusion. I have just done, thanks to your invitation, a sort of critical rereading of the French experience of the catechumenate, with the intention of highlighting what in this experience could interest you on practice in Ireland. I hope to have answered the initial requests in this. The essential thing remains that all these journeys of adults will become Christians. In their diversity, each one is allowing us to see, to hear, and to share the wonders of God. We can all give thanks for this. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Lacroix, for that very rich presentation. I'd just like to open up the floor for discussion and any questions. We have some time for Q&A. If you have any questions or points you'd like to clarify, maybe just raise your hand. Thank you. I might just begin, Professor. I was in the United States in 2022, and I also heard very high dropout rate in the United States, as you mentioned, with neophytes, that there's a high attrition rate. And that's also the case in the United States. And I'm wondering whether it's a case of, do you think it's that the neophytes aren't finding that dynamism in parish communities that sustains them then after their initiation? Any thoughts about why such a high figure in terms of attrition?
Can you tell me in French?
Yeah, apologies for my yes.
I understand by the question.
Yeah, my schoolboy French, so apologies in advance. So, pourquoi ont des gens quitté l'Église d'après pour les néophytes? Est-ce que c'est peut-être la vie en les paroisses ne sont pas dynamiques? Pourquoi?
Je vais répondre, vous traduisez, je vais répondre en français.
Ah.
Oui, la vie des paroisses, pas assez dynamique, mais je pense que l'Église, les paroisses, n'écoutent pas les charismes des néophytes. C'est-à-dire, les néophytes peuvent rendre dynamiques les paroisses, mais on ne les entend pas. On ne les inclut pas dans le travail. Si vous pouvez traduire, dans la pastorale de la paroisse.
Yeah, thank you. So, your response was that your thoughts is that in a way that the gifts that the neophytes bring to the parishes aren't received and fostered, and yeah, I think that's an excellent it's an interesting understanding of that. Yeah. Any other questions? I'll if you do speak French, please please feel free to speak. Thank you, Martin.
Just a bit more about the role of sponsor, because my understanding is one of the, from the outside, the impressive parts of the French system, that you have effectively trained sponsors who actually are kind of there as a body to be kind of given. So could you say a bit more about their formation of the formation and training of sponsors?
La formation des parrains.
Oui.
Les parrains ne sont pas formés en France. The response is rapid because the sponsors are not. There is no formation for sponsors. No formation. Il y a eu dans les années 50, 60, 1960, 70 des formations qui n'existent plus. This formation does not exist today.
But for the people who accompany, because you mentioned 10,000 at the beginning.
Yes. Des accompagnateurs, companions.
Yes. So they're a different role.
Excuse me, companions. Yes. There are formations in dioceses. There are formations of companions. Alex has translated companions. Nous, on parle accompagnateurs ou catéchistes.
Oui.
There are formations donc, in dioceses, but today the responsible of catechumenate are not formed. There is a lack of formation in France. Donc there are formations, but not enough. It's not enough, and the companions are not, for example, are not very formed in liturgy. Voilà. Donc, there are formations. I go, me and others people in dioceses, but voilà, it's formation not enough, and priests do not participate at this formation. Bishops, and the ritual is not. They don't know ritual. They don't understand ritual, and this is a real problem in France, because before it was not like that. They were more formed, but today it's a real problem. A problem because we have not a priority of this formation. And there are more and more catechumens, and how, it's a real problem that the companions and the bishops, the priests, understand that there is a real need of formation. I say that the bishops are still focused to the catechesis of children, but there are more and more catechumens and adults who come and knock the door of de l'église. Et donc, bref, il y a a real lack of formation. It's really surprising for the French catechumenate, because it's a real it's a reality for the French church, and well, at Easter, the bishops are very talk about catechumenates, but after we have no des moyens, it's not a priority.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Martin. Patricia, you wanted to come in there?
I'll say this in English, and then I might try and say it in French if you don't understand my Scottish accent. So, Roland, are these companions actually catechists? So, have they a catechetical function or something else?
Ils ont une fonction catéchétique.
See.
Good question. I think no.
No.
No. I think the French catechumenate has, en français, a conçu l'accompagnement pas comme une catéchèse, comme un accompagnement de personnes spirituelles. On chemine avec eux, mais une réticence à la catéchèse elle-même.
Okay, okay.
Oui.
Yeah, so these are accompanying people. They are more like sponsors, no?
Yes.
Just sponsors.
Yes.
Okay.
Alors, en français, dans le rituel français, c'est le mot catéchiste. Et en France, à partir des années 1970, on a parlé d'accompagnateurs et accompagnatrices.
Okay.
We have abandoned the term catéchiste.
Okay.
Abandonné le terme catéchiste.
And key, why have you abandoned the term catechist?
Because it's catechesis, catechist, it's the children. Not
Okay.
not
okay. Okay. Okay.
It's a real problem. It's a question because today, when I tell to companions, I tell there, you are catechists. They are not very happy with that.
Okay.
Thanks, Patricia. Any?
Can I have another question?
Yes, by all means.
Okay. So where Roland, where are there examples of best practice or good practice?
Of catechumenate?
Of the catechumenate, where would you consider there to be best practice examples?
It's difficult. I think the catechumenate is it's Christian initiation. The practice is to mettre en œuvre le rituel, to practice the ritual.
Yeah.
And when we practice the ritual, the catechesis come to accompany the liturgy. It's liturgy first, and then with the Bible, we accompany. Comment dire? La liturgie est première, et la catéchèse doit être articulée avec la liturgie. Doit être tissée avec la liturgie. Donc voilà. The difficulty is, I said, the formation of liturgy for the companions. They are not from liturgy. They don't know. They don't. And the ritual, the priests, a lot of priests in France don't know the ritual. They do. They read and they do, but they don't understand the sense, what it means really.
I would think this is the same in Ireland. Very similar in Ireland. We have you know, our numbers of adults are growing in Dublin for baptism, confirmation, Eucharist, but the priests generally don't understand the opportunity that it is to renew the whole parish, the opportunity to experience the rituals. They do not understand. It is very low bar, really. Yes. So it's very similar, except there are pockets of hope, you know. Yeah.
Thanks, Patricia. Kevin, if you want to unmute, yep.
Yes, okay, thank you. I'm coming from England, and I just wonder, Roland. In France, is the catechumenate purely being used for people being baptized, or is it being used as a process also for people who are coming from other Christian traditions, as tends to be the case if they're not going through the whole process, but they, in terms of the process of preparation, often they follow the same path, although obviously they don't receive baptism or receive the communion. Sorry, did you understand what I'm saying, Roland?
A little, Alex, you can.
Est-ce que possible que les gens que sont déjà baptisés dans une autre tradition, si usant cet programme de catéchésis con cette personne?
Non, non. Les personnes déjà baptisées dans d'autres traditions ont un rite pour entrer dans la communion catholique et sont confirmées. C'est la confirmation. And there is a program of not the same that catechumens.
So they don't do it together. They don't do the program together.
It's the practices are different, but they can be with catechumens, but they don't. There are not stages of them, and it depends of the parishes of the. Today we regroup persons who are in a journey to rediscover the faith, to change of confession, etc. But the same catechesis, but not the same stages of the ritual.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Kevin. I might have a question. What really strikes me often is if you look at the saint bishops like Saint Ambrose, Augustine of Hippo, the bishops in late antiquity, Cyprian, they took very seriously their
yes.
They took very seriously their catechetical role, and particularly in terms of catechumens. They gave a lot of time to this, and it seems to me that if we say that the church rediscovered maybe the catechumenate, the Second Vatican Council, how this is, maybe a bit provocative, but how can we maybe foster a renewal in terms of catechumenal activity for bishops and clergy? How can we maybe, being inspired by these great bishops, saint bishops of late antiquity, how can bishops and the clergy play a more active catechetical role in the catechumenal process?
Les évêques.
Oui.
Et les pères de l'Église.
Oui. Right. So,
we must form the bishops to the Christian initiation. They must read the ritual. I know bishops, they don't know the ritual. And the role of bishops is with catechumens is really important. But they have no conscience of it.
Yes.
No conscience, and they like the catechumen. They receive letters for catechumens, and well, they are happy. But after Easter, they do autre chose, other things. They don't.
Yeah.
Comment dire? Catechumens, we are happy for this increasing of catechumens, but it's enough. It's enough. I know bishops who in formations. I have constated that bishops does not know. I've not read the ritual. Alors, they perhaps other persons can have the role of Père de l'Église and write catechesis, mystagogique, baptismal catechesis, but not the bishops, I think.
Thank you. Thanks, Professor. Any final questions or comments?
Just a thought, you know, I had friends who lived in Paris, yes, during the time of Cardinal Lustiger, yes, and they used to get very excited about the catechumenate in Paris and how wonderful it was, but it is perhaps in comparison to nothing and no experience, you know, at all. And you seem to be highlighting the need of deep development in France, but in Ireland, we actually are not even off the starting block. I don't know how you say that in French, you know, but we have a considerable amount of very hard work to do. Yeah. And maybe starting like I mean, people present themselves in Dublin all the time. And we try to educate the priests through the dialogue about the person that has just emerged, but perhaps we need something much more formal. Yeah. Comprends? Non?
Pas tout. La question? Il n'y a pas de question?
There
is no question.
No, not really.
No question. Okay.
Bon
courage.
Thank you. Yes, I think what surprised me, I did a survey, an online survey about 2 years ago to the various dioceses just to get the figures for adult catechumenate, and the figures were quite surprising. They were higher than I would have expected. So I think the numbers in Ireland are growing for this, but I really appreciate your time, Professor Lacroix, for just giving us your learning, your experience from the French catechumenate, and it's something that we can certainly learn from here in Ireland. So thank you so much for your time. And
excuse me for my very bad English.
No. Thank you so much.
Thank you.